know we must learn to stand together, learn to live together, learn it's not forever. I know. Let's see if we can let the people know.
Yes, yes, it is The Middle, Politics and Profanity. I am your host, Ronnie Wright. To my side, the turner to my hooch, my good friend Justin. What's going on, my man?
Hey, man.
And on the other side of the glass, he is the man who, when the bottle says rinse and repeat is necessary, he doesn't repeat. Because a real man gets it right the first time. It's Ryan. What's going on, man?
Not much, just getting it right the first time.
That's the way to live life, my friend. That's the way to live life. Not like Elon Musk, which is what we were just talking about before we went on the air. He gets it right a lot of the time, but some of the time he gets it just ridiculously wrong. But the things he got right kind of revolutionized the world a couple times, so give him props where it's due. The tweeting, not so much, but we're used to that now. We live in the world where people in power.
Twitter is becoming everybody's failure to communicate.
It's everybody's subconscious bubbling into a couple of hundred characters.
It's the artificial intelligence of the internet grasping at our identity.
That would almost excuse them, because then it would be something else taking the words and the thoughts and putting them out there. But it's them. It's a real person.
It's the machine world coaxing you into saying things.
I don't think Elon Musk has used the Donald Trump defense, which is I have people sometimes who tweet for me.
No.
Right. I think Elon Musk takes responsibility for all his tweets, even to the point where it cost him his chairmanship of his own company.
Worth it.
Can I point out that
he didn't even like running that company, he said. It's kind of a pain in the ass.
Most successful people, though, they get things wrong a lot before they get it right.
That's exactly what we were just talking about. I was like, ask Thomas Edison.
To be successful, other than if you're born into it.
Yeah, man. That's the curse of genius, is having that free associating mind where you're out there and you're looking at things at a different angle than everybody else. And so when you say things sometimes, it really catches people off guard, like, what the fuck is he talking about? But when you get it right, when you say something off the top of your head and it turns out to be like PayPal or Tesla or SpaceX, people are like, oh, fuck, he got that right. Yeah, like really got it right.
SpaceX was a good one.
Yeah, Justin and I were just talking about the fight, and I was thinking about, a champion fighter that spent more of his life getting his ass beat than beating people's ass.
100%. 100%. I did it for a little bit when I was younger. I was an amateur, but I that's a tough road to go down, trying to make a living off your body.
Oh, shit.
It's a very short lifespan. And it is a lot of pain and effort, and even with all that, it most of the time does not pay off. So for kids listening at home, if you've decided to emulate Conor McGregor and then go out there and try and earn a living, beating the living piss out of people, I would say just beat the living piss out of people in bars like everybody else does.
I think people who belong
easier
in the fight scene, like at a high level like that, are the people with an inner rage that can never be stopped.
Yeah. There is a lot of that. Yeah.
That's what happened in that fight yesterday. I saw a lot of rage.
A lot of these guys are, and a lot of the people they surround them with, especially, they don't have like agents and managers. They got like parole officers.
Right.
That's that scene, man.
Yeah.
Like most of those guys would be in jail.
A lot of it's super isolating and just training with a coach, and that's it.
Yeah.
One of the fighters yesterday was McGregor, Conor McGregor. Mm-hmm. He's from Ireland.
Yes.
So he probably got his job by beating the snot out of people in bars.
Right. That's where you come up. You come up in the streets. I mean,
Especially in Ireland, because what do you do in Ireland?
Some parts.
You drink. Go to the Guinness factory.
Not the people at Christchurch College. They're not drinking and beating people up.
Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's to be seen. So we got big stories this week. Let's get right into it. Besides Elon Musk losing his chairmanship and Conor McGregor tapping out. Surprise, surprise, shocking that Brett Kavanaugh is our new Supreme Court justice.
Yeah. You called it.
As I've said all along, no matter what the Dog and Pony Show was, and it was a fun and interesting Dog and Pony Show that they put on, very revealing, more about the people in our government than about Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
That in the end, it was all heading in one direction, which is they have the numbers, so there's no real way around
It's over.
the guy getting on the Supreme Court. He's going to get on the Supreme Court. I mean, we use the "I can shoot a person on Fifth Avenue," quote from Donald Trump, and basically that was Brett Kavanaugh, unless he literally stood up and shot one of the Democratic senators live on C-SPAN.
Yeah.
There was pretty much no way that he was not going to get confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, and that says a lot. It says a lot about what we've been talking about, which is the tribalism that is so rampant in not just in politics. And here's the thing. Like when I first started this show, I came in and I sat as a guest on one of Jack's shows. And we had those two knuckleheads. I don't remember what the fuck their names were. And they were both sitting there talking up Trump and like repeating the talking points. And I'm thinking to myself, and the guy told me he had like a 90 IQ or something. Like, I don't know if he was proud of it or whatever. And I kept my mouth shut because it wasn't my show. But when I got my show, I railed against that because it's like, you know what? These fucking dummies have no idea what government does. They have no understanding of how it functions. They have the briefest of knowledge of politics only at the presidential level because, they exist in a world where that is headline news quite often.
Here's
so
the thing,
you almost can't avoid it.
That's like the trend just amongst people. And it's given to us by our current education system. Like it isn't just in the realm of politics where you blindly go for Trump in that crazy way. It has to do with everything down to like the little decisions that you make about what you buy and things like that. Just simple stuff that you could be more well read on. And there's a huge lacking of base knowledge. Huge. Just
Absolutely.
A massive ignorance on the part of the American people.
Take it at the pop culture level. Guys like, when Jay Leno used to do the man on the street stuff. Yeah. And people still do it today. And you see them all the time on like Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, where people will go up and they'll be like, oh yeah, I've got a college degree and blah, 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 blah. Name, 2 continents. And then people blank. It's like, really? There's only 7. You can't name 2 of them? All right, name one of them. And then they name one. It's like, okay, name a country on that continent.
Not even close.
And it's like, really?
That's like I love the John Oliver ongoing joke. Have you seen his show?
Yeah, sure.
Last Week Tonight.
Yep.
He does the thing where he'll start talking about a country and he'll put the country up and be like, oh, this is Uganda. And you probably didn't know that this isn't really Uganda. It's actually Bolivia. This is Uganda. No, that's not it either.
Right, man.
You didn't know that either.
I thought I was pretty good at geography until I actually took geography in college.
Yeah.
And the guy, like the professor that I had was one of those professors who wrote the book that you had to buy to take the course. Right. So he wasn't not fucking around. And he was pretty much like, this is going to be more than what you ever thought geography was. And he was right. And I was able to squeak out an A. And I'm going to tell you what, out of the people in that class, I was probably one of the only A's. And I busted my ass to try and get an A in that class, only because the guy told me it was going to be really ridiculously difficult. And I take that as a challenge.
Yeah.
But it was fucking difficult, especially when you start getting into Africa.
I remember I think I got like a B- in my geo class.
Right, man. I mean, when you start getting into Africa, and you start looking at some of these, Ivory Coast
tricky
countries, and having the different Congo, and there's the Republic of Congo, and then man, you get into people start losing their mind. But anyway,
there's a great meme that I just saw.
Yeah.
It was America saying our education system needs to improve. And then their American education, we need another standardized test and more homework. Right. Finland's like, actually, we became one of the world's best education systems by getting rid of homework and standardized tests. Also, we pay our teachers better than you. China, same. Belgium, same. American education's response, better make it 2 more standardized tests.
Right.
We did do that.
Well, I mean, what was it, Michael Moore, right? He went over to, Norway or Sweden? And like they have the schools over there where they go to school for like 4 hours.
The good one was Germany and how
Right.
they teach the true history, and they don't shy away from talking about how Germans were monsters at one point.
Yeah.
And like all the kids there grow up knowing, hey, this is right around the corner. We better not like we better, but like, you know, good people need to prevail. And that's
It
like
used to be the opposite with Germany.
yeah, there used to be indoctrination, right?
Right. But I mean, let's be honest. That's us now.
It is. That's what I'm saying. That's
That's
the
us
most
now.
like that was the most revealing one.
What happened to America, and this is what I always and what I learned and what I found out on my own as well, which is, you know, after World War II, we became the world power. You know, we can talk about Russia all you want. The only reason that Russia ever became an issue is because they got the bomb. Other than that, their economy is shit, their military was shit compared to ours. Everything was shit compared to what we had. So there was
I don't think a lot of Americans realize just how much of a powerhouse we currently are and have been for a long time. Like there are some equivalents. Like if you take the Chinese Navy, for example, they have a lot of ships and stuff.
Yeah, they're
Well,
building aircraft carriers, which is
right,
scary.
but like the newest aircraft
And
carrier
islands.
was a decommissioned Russian aircraft carrier that's like 30 years old.
Right.
It's a piece of shit. Like the American military force is no joke.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing.
it's
I was
a
just
serious,
saying, we're a
serious
powerhouse.
situation.
How? Are you talking about military power? Then yes, we're a
Yeah.
powerhouse. But then again, you know, when you look at those charts about how much we spend on military,
Oh, it's everything.
it's
We
us,
literally
and then you
spend
take
everything
the
on it.
next 12 countries and combine their defense budgets, and it's about equal to ours.
Yeah. Oh, it's fucking madness.
Right.
It's, I mean, it's effective in our way to assert our will across the world.
It's effective for, you know, for hegemony. You know,
Yeah,
it's effective
for spreading American and Western
for
ideas.
just being the guy who has to be the biggest guy on the block, because we've learned in history there always has to be a biggest guy on the block.
So it's gonna be
Has
us.
to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, well, you know, and the funny part is that the countries that step up and they are the people who have to be the hegemon, the guy on the block who's the biggest guy, are the ones who fall.
Right. Always.
Are we there?
I don't know. All the other ones that fell were around for a lot longer.
Around for a lot longer, but
However, that the rate went down over time.
Cost of technology
it's
and everything
coming up
else.
exponentially to where that amount of time has slowed or gotten shorter.
right.
as
It's
the-
not
as
like
the centuries
it's
have
not
gone
like
by.
in the time of Genghis Khan where the Chinese could keep the black powder secret, and no one
for
found
like
out about
500
it.
years.
Right. It's like, you know, this.
I don't know if that's true, but
Well,
it
they
was
did.
different,
They
yeah.
basically did, because by the time they were using it on the battlefields in Europe, it wasn't until in the 1400s where they really used like
Right.
real cannon and everything like that. But
So that keeping that under wraps really set everyone back.
yeah, because China had it in like the 800s or 900s.
Yeah,
they started using it as
it's
weapons around
ridiculous.
1000.
Yep.
So when Genghis Khan was around the late 1100s, early 1200s, they were already using cannon and handheld guns.
Right.
Hand cannons. So I mean that didn't come into use on the European battlefield for another couple hundred years. But there's no more secrets like that. This is the time where people like in North Korea can get a lot of the shit that they need just off the fucking internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then
There
they
are
can
a
find
couple
out.
of big blockbuster movies that if you watched in succession, you could get the basics of how to build a nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
And
how
they're
to
like
build a
from
reactor.
the 80s.
All right, man.
I
So
don't know
those
if,
days are gone.
North Korea can't even get on the internet, though.
Well, North Korean citizens can't get onto the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right. North Korean government is all about the internet because that's the cheapest, that's the biggest bang for their buck.
Yeah.
The money they invest in weapons and everything is nonsense because there's no one to fight in a conventional war.
There's probably at least a couple 100,000 up to a few, maybe 1 million or more North Koreans amongst the multi-million population that have constant access to things, and they're the ones behind the scenes giving information to the higher ups. So there's probably a whole network of information that's completely separate from the citizenry.
Yeah.
And that, that's Orwell. That's like, okay, all the priests.
It's the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, all the
Right.
ministry people, we know what's going on and we know what happened, but most people don't know anything at all.
Right.
And like knowledge is power in the whole.
And the reason that North Korea can invest time, energy, and money into that is because they're not like the United States. We spend as much as we do on military budgets because we still do fight conventional war.
Right.
We still do put ground troops into countries. We still bomb them. We still roll tanks in. North Korea don't do that. They have the threat of that. But after you build it up to a certain point, it's like, okay, you can only build a wall so high.
Right. You can only play around on your border for so long.
Right. So now they've invested their time and energy into the internet.
And speaking of learning how to make a nuclear reactor, I think I read about a kid who made a nuclear reactor for a school project.
Yeah, he condensed uranium in his garage. He was featured on Vice. Recently, he's been doing new nuclear tests, but he's one of those little genius kids.
Yeah, someone just give him a scholarship.
And it's not even, I'm skeptical of like calling them that. Really what it is there was a human, and when he was very young, he decided to put all his energy and effort and focus into learning physics and nuclear physics. And when you do that for 5-6 years, when your mind is young, you're super elastic. You can make connections that other people couldn't at the time.
But you've got to have
5-6 years doing anything, you're going to be good.
You got to have the essential wiring for that.
Yeah,
though,
that's
man.
true.
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
Wiring is what gave him the motivation to focus so
Right.
hard. And that's like the mechanics of being a genius, is like having that willpower to like go on with that,
But I could lock 20 kids in a room and teach them physics, and maybe one of them might come out of
there. It would be
there.
good to have 20 kids together.
Right.
The social aspect there would take over immediately.
Well, yeah, we could just keep them like Clockwork
Separate.
Orange. We keep them tied down with their eyelids open.
This is
saw
what
that,
the people
though-
in the deep state are trying to figure out.
When I saw that, have you guys ever played the Fallout games?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, what? Did our universe merge with the Fallout universe?
Yeah, right.
Like, that's seriously something that would happen in that game's universe.
yeah, man.
Kids
Yep.
making nuclear reactors as science
Oh,
projects.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That kid's really cool. That whole story about him doing that is really neat. It's really inspirational.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So we got off of a topic here, which was Kavanaugh and the government. But I mean, that was the bottom line, which is that that's where the government's at these days. It's tribal, and one tribe has to triumph over the other at all costs. Matters not what it's going to do to the country in the long run. And I think that is how an empire falls.
Yeah.
When you've convinced
This empire falling is going to basically look like nation states rising.
So here it is. So I look back, and I look back at failed empires and systems of government. So let's go back and look at some of like Greece, which was a direct democracy.
Yes.
Literally one man, one vote. They went and they put their little stones in a big jar, and they counted them up, and that was how they voted on things. What happened was that the individuals in the city-states were so independent that in times when they needed to coalesce for survival, they didn't.
Right.
Because each independent state wanted to make their own decision on how to act. And
you
in
get
the
the
end,
free rider problem there.
and in the end, they went ahead and they just steamrolled them all up. Sparta couldn't do it themselves.
Right.
Athens couldn't do it themselves. They needed to all band together. They did it once, and then they never did it again. And then Rome, which started as a monarchy, then became a republic, then became a dictatorship.
Right.
And all along the way, it was the people at the top, the class structure of the patrician, the equestrian, the plebes, going and being buying in to what the privileged class was selling them.
Yeah, the class thing there was huge.
Whether it be monarchy, whether it be republic, whether it be dictatorship, if you throw enough games and bread, if you give them what they want, if you give them the locker ups,
Still works.
right? If you give them the we're going to win at
100%.
all costs kind of thing, they don't care if it's a dictatorship or a republic or a monarchy. They don't give a shit. Right? They just want to make sure that there's food on the table, and that's scary. But that's how they fell. And Rome was like much like America, where they were the military. There was nobody even in the same universe militarily as them, and still they declined, and still they fell.
They ended up breaking up into East and West, and then it further divided there. Then you had little bands of barbarians and stuff start picking away at the borders.
Right.
It's a slow fall. It was
But-
a slow, painful fall for a lot of Romans.
I always paint the picture as that the Roman Empire didn't fall. There was a second Roman Empire. It's called the Catholic Church.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So the Catholic Church, religion was basically the Christian religion was taken.
See
and
do you see
it was
what happened
created.
We filled out Europe. So
Yeah.
they ran out of land. So, it got to and the same thing's happening now. We ran out of land on the earth. So at the time, the Roman world was, Europe and stuff. They filled all that out and they couldn't sustain it.
Right.
So now you have to go to the battle of the mind. So now they took it to the Catholic level. And they were like, fuck it, we'll just win them over in the mind. We don't need the land or having designated areas anymore.
Convince you that your real king is somebody that I made up. But I represent him. You can't talk to him. But I can talk to him for you.
Yeah. But people die, so
Fucking
we're going to have to
dummies.
re-elect this dude once in a while.
Right. But I mean, come on. Fucking dummies.
It's like that hotline to God that the Catholic Church.
Yeah. You can't talk to him directly, but I can talk to him for you. So you tell me what you did wrong, and then I'll decide what your punishment is. I mean, he'll decide what your punishment is. I'll just tell you. Stupid dummies. So I think that this is a symptom of definitely the decline of empire. I don't want to make it like the Kavanaugh confirmation of the Supreme Court is a symbol of the fall of empire.
No.
It's just one more step on that ladder, that we're descending into.
It's the step that we took, and then we were like, oh, let's look back at what's going on. And we're like, oh, wow, we are coming a long way now.
Yeah. Some of the next steps are going to be the court cases that come to the Supreme Court and get decided along conservative lines. And then we'll see, people who...
The big one's Roe, right?
Right. But, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that comes up. I mean, we'll get into it. Let's get into it now. You sent me that link to that PBS documentary.
Oh, yeah. I
Dark
forgot
Money.
to ask you about that.
So I watched it.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with Montana, and I'm familiar with the struggles that they had there in the campaign finance. So the documentary is called Dark Money. It's on PBS. You can still catch it on there. You can run it. I donate every month to PBS, so I get to stream everything.
Is the shit. Nova is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Exactly. So I get to stream everything. I think you can do it like real minimal. It's like $5 or $10 a month or something. You could stream everything they have. If not, it may be available just to regular people. Just go on the website and stream. I think it might be. But it was about corporate money in politics. It focused on the state of Montana. And Montana is one of those states that has like the earliest campaign finance reform because they got ravaged by corporate interests, by big,
Montana's like
conglomerates.
Louisiana, isn't it? Where Louisiana is basically oil-bearing country. They have parishes.
Sure.
And like it's a very corrupt.
They're like
area.
France, man.
Yeah,
Their law
there's
down
some
there is
shit in
completely
Louisiana.
different
Yeah.
from the rest of America.
But Montana's similar in that corporate interests for copper, I believe.
Copper
they
and
went
other
in there.
minerals.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
went in there and screwed up the whole situation.
Oh yeah, they just strip mined the whole goddamn state.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that
deregulation and bribes.
right.
and
So
stuff
they
like
bribed and bought up every politician and judge in the state that they could buy up, so that they could deregulate all the industries that they were making money in, and they basically raped the entire state until the people in the state started getting wise and said, "Hey, fuck these assholes," and then they started getting people in there to change the laws, and they had one of the first campaign finance reform laws on the books. It was like 1910 or 1912 or something like that. So it was very early on. So they had a history of independence from the rest of the states and from the federal government or federal law in that they regulated how much money could go into campaigns from individuals and from corporations. Then Citizens United happened.
Huge.
And so Citizens United was the first Supreme Court decision that we could look at as what happens if you have a conservative court. What happens when you have a court that's basically bought and paid for by corporate interests?
And very simply, what that means is to go conservative in that way is basically saying, the more liberal attitude would be to regulate that situation of campaign finance, because you can see how putting money into politics can adjust the situation negatively for a small amount of people versus large. So the conservative side of that is to deregulate and let them
the
do
word
it anyway.
regulation. That's
Yeah.
the end all be all.
So essentially, the core value there is this is something we don't want to be involved with because it'll handle itself, even though it's proven to not handle itself.
Right.
Through massive death and
They're
the
magicians with
destruction
that.
of nature and everything.
It's always like, well, it deregulate unless it's something that we feel we need to regulate. like,
Yeah.
abortion.
Right.
Right. Then all of a sudden regulation's okay.
Yep.
If I can do whatever I want to do because, freedom and liberty, motherfucker, this is America.
Yeah.
But you can't do anything you want to do because I need to have control over that too.
Right.
So regulation's okay if we're doing the regulating. But any of these liberals,
They're regulating wrong.
they're regulating the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right. So that was basically the gist of the documentary. Was after Citizens United, which is the Supreme Court saying that money equals free speech and that corporations have personhood, which is ridiculous.
This spawns a massive web, if you could picture it, of like streets going to different towns, and each town is a corporation, and all those streets are just streams of money.
Right.
Like tens and tens of thousands of dollars going to 3, 4, 5 different shell corporations, all supporting one group that's a think tank for another group that all leads up to the party.
And nobody can stop it from happening, because if you try and stand up against the corporation, you'll never get elected.
Right.
Because they'll pump billions into opponents' campaigns, and all across the country, that's what happens these days.
They can do that because the cost of the regulation that they gain is more than what they put out in cash at the time to change the mind one way or the other.
And a lot of times within the first year or two of the regulation, getting deregulated.
Right.
I mean, for a long term, they're talking about, probably trillions over the next, 20, 30 years in a lot of these industries.
Yeah.
That, like oil and natural gas with fracking all over. They basically, like our state, they basically tried to make it illegal for any jurisdiction, any county, any home rule, so county or city or town, from making regulations that say you can't frack in that area.
Oh.
So in other words, they took away the home rule of the local government.
Is there natural gas in Florida?
There is. There's natural gas pipelines as
Oh.
well. So they took away the rule from anybody from being able to stop fracking.
Isn't it a similar situation with solar in Florida?
Well, they tried to do that. They tried to sneak that in with an amendment in 2014.
Yeah.
And it was basically an amendment that they tried to make it like it was good for solar energy. But really, it was the people like FPL
Saying you can't put panels on.
If you put panels on, if you have electricity from solar energy, that you'd basically be a utility like they are and be subject to regulation. And so it would make it so that you couldn't have solar panels.
That's a little far.
So in other words, the reverse argument of Citizens United.
Yeah.
That people are corporations.
So how fucked
instead of
up is that?
corporations or
That's
people.
so crazy yeah.
But this is what happens when you have these companies. And let me tell you something. Some guy who just gets elected to office. And look, the first time I ran for office, I was not ready to. If I had been elected, I would not have been ready to be in office. Now my eyes are wide fucking open and I know what the hell's going on. But some guy from Oklahoma who signs some pledge to some, Americans for Freedom PAC.
Yeah.
Which is basically a bunch of corporations that want to frack in Oklahoma.
Right.
And he says, oh, yeah, I'm going to make sure that there's no regulations on fracking. And he gets up at the government. There is nothing. He is stuck now. There is absolutely nothing he can do. He has to vote for deregulation on everything that he said, or else they're just going to primary him in the next election or fund his fucking opponent when it comes to the general. But one way or the other, that guy either does what he said he was going to do or the corporation gets him out. So how do you beat that? How do you beat that? When these guys have such deep pockets and they have such knowledge about how everything operates, how the government operates at the federal, state, and local levels. And here's this guy who took a couple classes in junior college and suddenly is a congressman.
Yeah.
Has no idea how the government functions, how a bill gets to be a law, even though he watched Schoolhouse Rock. He doesn't really know how a bill becomes a law. And this corporation has 185 lawyers in one division that works solely on deregulating fracking. How? How is he going to possibly be able to come up against that? And how, as a candidate trying to get that guy out of office, how do you argue a way to convince people to vote for you when a corporation puts a couple of tens of millions of dollars into a shadow campaign
Yeah.
against you and for the guy who's already in office doing their bidding. How do you beat that?
I don't know.
So that's what the documentary was about.
Yeah.
And it was called Dark Money. And basically, once that Citizens United decision was made at the Supreme Court level, the corporations came swooping right back into Montana and saying the laws that Montana has had on its books since 1912 violate the Supreme Court decision of Citizens United. So it had to be struck from the law books. And they did. Even though the state won at the state Supreme Court level, because it went back up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court reaffirmed their earlier decision, which is you're fucked. Corporations are people. People have the right to spend money in elections because money equals free speech. Constitution, America. Fucking people. So in the end, what they had to do was they had to go out like we do here in Florida, which is try and get constitutions changed in the state that they live in, changing your state constitution. So if you can change a state constitution, it becomes a bigger barrier to the federal government passing laws that can overturn your state's constitution. And you can also do it in a variety of different ways where you can break up by state law. You can break up each individual industry, or you can break up each individual level of government and put individual restrictions on the money that come into those campaigns, and then basically tell the corporations, go fuck yourself. Now you have to file 85 different lawsuits instead of filing one.
Oh.
And that's the way you try and keep it tied up in the courts as long as you possibly can. And then, hopefully, you hope things like what just happened yesterday don't happen, in where they get another fucking yes vote onto the Supreme Court.
What was the split before? Now it's 2 in favor.
It was 5-4 in favor of conservatives prior, but there were 2. The guy who just left, Kennedy, and there was one other.
Scalia?
Scalia was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I said on my Twitter feed that I would take the ghost of Antonin Scalia back on the Supreme Court rather than have frickin' Brett Kavanaugh. At least with Scalia, I knew what I was getting.
Yeah.
And he didn't, try and rape somebody. Even though he was a fucking douchebag, no one ever accused him of trying to rape somebody.
Right.
Just want to put that out there.
But anyway, now it what is it? 6-4.
Now it's going to be 6-3.
Right. That's what I was getting at.
It's still going to be it's going to be 6-3 because it was
just heavily in
Kagan,
favor and
Sotomayor, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh man, I see. So yeah, this was the one that was going to try to push it more towards the liberal.
Right, because now they're going to have a solid 5-4, even if a swing vote goes the other way.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Not to mention the fact that Brett Kavanaugh is 51 years old.
Right.
So
Which
that's
means a long ass time.
Solid yes vote for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court's supposed to be like partisan or bipartisan, right?
It's supposed to be nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan.
And the reason being is that was the scary part about this guy's rant when he was, when he went back before the committee last week, when he ranted about Democrats, he ranted about revenge by the Clintons. He said what comes around goes around. And it's like, that would disqualify you from sitting on a circuit court as a federal judge. It should certainly disqualify you if you sit on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Even the former Justice John Paul Stevens, who's 90-something years old, he was in an interview the other day. He was at an event, and he said, at first I totally approved of the guy because he was qualified. He was qualified for the job. After hearing the things that he had to say, he is wholly disqualified to hold the seat on the Supreme Court. So somebody else said that Judge Rehnquist, who was the justice of the Supreme Court, he would have been presiding over the last really fair and deliberative Supreme Court. The Supreme Court where you've got decisions, and even those in dissent made wholly responsible arguments.
Right.
And those in the majority, came to their majority opinion painfully.
Yeah.
And that's really what the Supreme Court is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an extremely deliberative body that has to make incredibly razor sharp, razor thin calls on interpretation of law. It's not supposed to be, well, this law favors my political leanings, and so I'm going to vote on this regardless of what I think of it. That's when it goes off. That's when it becomes another branch of the executive branch.
Right.
It becomes an executive branch bunch of lackeys. And the last time this happened was during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's time in office. And he tried to change the number of Supreme Court justices. He wanted it to go to 11, much like the amp on in this is Spinal Tap.
That's it.
It went to 11. So he wanted it to go to 11. I forget what the reasoning behind it was, but in the end, there was no buy-in even from his own party to do that, and so he wasn't able to do it. However, there may be some buy-in going forward if Democrats are able to sweep the board. I doubt that's going to happen, and I doubt that they'd be able to actually complete it because as much as I like Democrats as a check on Republicans, unfortunately, Democrats have an incredible way of snatching victory, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. They always seem to put their foot in it in the last minute. They vote their conscience, God forbid, and that usually results in not getting done what you need. As much as I dislike the GOP, just like I disliked George W. Bush when he was in office, the bottom line is they're lockstep. They vote together. Supreme Court justice is your latest example. They vote together and they stand shoulder to shoulder even when the ship is burning and everything else, because that's what they do. So he's on there, and outside of the confirmation, there was still that sham investigation that nobody really believes was an investigation because they didn't talk to like 40 witnesses throughout his life that would have been able to corroborate that this guy just, not just that he tried to rape somebody. Okay, we'll put that as we don't know that he did. But there was a credible complaint against him on it. But he also had a dozen ethics complaints that got passed to Chief Justice John Roberts, who was W's pick. He had Judge Kavanaugh is currently a U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit Court judge. And a fellow judge on his panel, the Karen LeCraft Henderson, she forwarded more than a dozen misconduct complaints to Chief Justice John Roberts about Brett Kavanaugh. Including the reports were substantive enough that they should be investigated by fellow judges on the same panel, but Chief Justice John Roberts, well, he didn't think so. So he's been sitting on those complaints, even though everybody's been doing an FBI investigation on this guy. He had extra hearings. He had people who accused him of criminal wrongdoing. This guy's been sitting on a dozen ethics complaints that are actionable items that a Supreme Court judge could look at and say, oh, this D.C. Court of Appeals judge is fucking up, or he's lying under oath, or he's doing other things that would disqualify you from being a judge. But he sat on them. I wonder why he would sit on him.
I don't know.
Well, it turns out, Chief Justice Roberts was appointed by then President George W. Bush.
Do you think the move to sit on the Feinstein information was good?
She had no choice in the matter. If you have somebody come to you that says that they want to remain
I don't know,
anonymous.
Though. It's weird. You got to look at it more like this person's coming in and wants to be anonymous, but they're going to a public official.
No. You look at it from the journalist point of view.
Oh, okay.
You get anonymous people come to you with actionable and real-time information.
Yeah.
You can't just reveal them because you want to prove that it's really true.
True.
It's true. You got people that came forward and gave you information. So the reason that Chief Justice John Roberts, might have sat on this information is because he revealed in his memoir, and people should stop writing books, revealed in his memoir that somebody helped George W. Bush to decide to nominate Chief Justice John Roberts to the Supreme Court. I wonder who that might be. Yes. It was Brett Kavanaugh, who at the time was working as a lawyer in the George W. Bush White House.
Working very hard on the Patriot Act.
And working hard on torture's
real
not
hard.
really torture.
Yeah.
And, no one's going to die from a little water down their nose.
The Patriot Act, that was a stunning piece of legislation.
It's a stunning piece of legislation that nobody read.
Turned America just into the best thing.
Turned it into America, who revealed in his memo that Kavanaugh had helped him to decide to nominate Chief Justice John Roberts to the court. So the guy who got you the job on the Supreme Court is currently coming up to sit next to you on the Supreme Court, and you have ethics complaints against him sitting in your file folder on your desk, and suddenly, whoop, somebody pushed him into the garbage can. Shocking. It's shocking that happens. That can't be true. Is it? Yes, it is. So that was the big story with him this week. That's done. Hopefully we can put that behind us and move the fuck on. Yeah, it sucks.
I smell
That's life.
Trump coming on. Something's going to happen. He'll be the next news item.
Biggest news item before Judge Kavanaugh, something that dropped this week that got not seen on many radars.
Man, I know what this is.
It was out
great.
there. It was huge. The New York Times spent the last 18 months on this story, and they've actually gone to the point where they've said tax fraud. Not allegedly. They said tax fraud. You know how New York Times says tax fraud? They have a room full of fucking lawyers that they run by the information that they have before they print it, and they say, can we say tax fraud? And they said, yeah. You could say tax fraud. You don't have to say alleged, because what you've got is literally tax fraud in any court in the land. Maybe not the Supreme
This
Court
has
now.
been by far my most favorite piece of news about this dude.
So it turns out that Donald Trump is not quite the self-made billionaire that he makes himself out to be, according to the New York Times. It was revealed that Donald Trump received the equivalent of at least $413 million from his father's real estate empire. What's more, much of this money came to Mr. Trump through dubious tax schemes he participated in during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud, the Times found. In all, the president's parents transferred well over $1 billion in wealth to their children, which could have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the 55% tax rate on gifts and inheritances that were in place at the time, but helped by a variety of, shall we say, tax dodges. The Trumps paid $52.2 million. Well, that's a lot short than $555 million. Under the tax.
Can we just remind everyone what the story is? What the George Washington cutting down the fucking tree.
So here's the Donald
is?
Trump origin story. The Donald Trump origin story is: I am a self-made billionaire. I am the greatest deal maker in the world, and I did it all on a $1 million loan from my father that I paid back every penny of. That's his...
The legit story that is like all over history in the internet.
And his books, The Art of the Deal, all that stuff. So his whole thing...
Like, I've been super skeptical of that
Right.
since the inception of it. You hear that, and sometimes you hear a million, sometimes you hear you got 2
I've
million.
read Marvel Universe origin stories that are more believable
dude, come
than
on.
his origin story.
You have a whole building with your name on it in the middle of the most expensive part of the world. Even as a child, I looked at this dude and I was like, oh, you cheated. That's fine. You put in the code. That's all right.
Right. So now we can understand a little bit about why he doesn't want to release any of his tax returns.
Yeah, no shit.
So to give you an idea of some of the schemes that he dealt with. Tax records reveal that during the peak of Mr. Trump's financial distress in 1990, which is when his casinos were going belly up, his father extracted an extraordinary sum, nearly $50 million in cash. While the Times could find no evidence that Fred Trump made any significant debt payments, charitable donations, or personal expenditures, because they had like 20-something years of his tax returns. Somebody had that turned over to the New York Times, his father's tax returns. He made there are indications that he wanted plenty of cash on hand to bail out his son if need be. That's what happened at Trump's Castle Casino, where an $18.4 million bond payment was due in December 1990. Fred Trump dispatched a trusted bookkeeper to Atlantic City with checks to buy $3.5 million in casino chips without ever placing a bet.
Yeah, the casino thing that's a ridiculous loan.
So it's under that New Jersey gaming laws, it would be an illegal loan, and it would have resulted in $65,000 in civil penalties, which it did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first time that that $1 million suddenly turned into 3.5 in chips. In 1987, his debt.
So right there.
Right.
Just the one thing.
3 times more than what he's telling. Well, actually, add the $1 million on top of that.
A massive difference in the situation. It's an insult to people. It's an insult to con artists to try to get away with a lie like that. Like, oh, dude, you're part of one of the richest families in the fucking country. Like, you had it. Like, I don't care what you say. You were set your entire life. You were making more money than most people do when you were 3 years old.
Speaking of richest families in the country, when he talks about he went to Ivy League school and all that stuff, because he went to Wharton.
Right.
He went to Fordham. He transferred to Wharton during his junior year.
Yeah.
His grades at Fordham were so-so, according to people that know what his grades were like. And the only reason he got into Wharton,
because you could buy the school,
was because the admissions person went to high school with his brother.
Oh.
Went to high school with his brother and knew that the family was one of the wealthiest families in the city. And so they gave him admission as a transfer, because when you're a transfer, it's easier to flub your numbers because they're not looking to give you admission in your freshman year.
Right.
So that's how he got to his fucking quote unquote Ivy League school. So he doesn't mention that he went to Fordham. He only mentions Wharton. Not that Fordham's a bad school. I'm just saying.
The whole thing.
Right. It's not Princeton. It's not Yale. And I'm sure every time somebody has a Yale or Harvard degree, he's got a choke on it because, Wharton. So anyways, here's another one. Fred Trump, in 1987, this is when Donald Trump started his descent, he spent $15.5 million to buy a 7.5% stake in Trump Palace, his son's condo tower rising on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. 4 years later, tax returns and financial statements show Fred Trump sold that stake for $10,000. The buyer? Donald Trump.
Yeah, man. Like, he was just working with his father his whole life. It wasn't like this guy's separate. There's no separate here.
Nope.
This is a family dynasty that won the game of playing with counties that have low populations and high vote counts.
Yeah, exactly that, man. So this just shows you all the stuff. I mean, it shows that the $1 million loan, he always said, $1 million loan, I had to pay him back with interest. He paid back nothing. In fact, the Times found Fred Trump lent his son at least $60.7 million, or $140 million in today's dollars. Much of it was never repaid.
Why would you repay it? The story itself was unbelievable when you hear it. Like, you're part of the rich family and your dad gave you $1 million and you had to pay it back. I don't think so, man.
After all of that.
It's kind of a dick thing to say about your dad, too.
After all of that, right. Well, after all of that, when his dad was sick and they knew he was on his way out, he tried to get his dad to sign a codicil to his fucking will that made him the sole executor.
And at the time, he was embroiled in that whole scandal.
And he was like, no fucking way. I'm not signing this. I might be sick and dying, but I ain't dead.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen.
Legacy to protect.
Yeah, man.
That happened in my family.
Somebody tried to change their will at the last minute?
They did it.
People get funny when it comes to money, man.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
I'm not one of those people. I mean, I've been around long enough where I've made a good deal of money, lost it, and made a good deal of money again. I mean, you have time in life to readjust, reset your course and correct yourself and get back into the black. There's no reason that you have to beg, borrow, steal. There's no reason you have to lie and cheat to get there. There's plenty of money out there, and even, little plebes like ourselves can grab a little piece of it, enough to make our lives comfortable. You don't have to steal, especially from family.
Yeah.
Money has never made me happy, even though that's kind of cliche.
Right.
But
it's true,
it hasn't.
Man. Right. If you need money to make you happy, it's not the money.
Of hate in my life.
Yeah, man. So anyway, so there's all kinds of things. And in fact, when his dad died, the single largest item in Fred Trump's estate, the single largest asset was a $10.3 million IOU from Donald Trump. I mean, so this creation myth of this president, and this is the thing, these people that buy into him as being some great deal maker or being some, some super rich, real estate mogul and all this, it's all a sham. The guy is a sham from top to bottom. If he was not, he would be more than happy to wallpaper every house in America with his tax returns, showing all the billions of dollars he has coming in and all the deals he's doing with all these great foreign corporations and people investing in his ideas. But he doesn't. Trust me. He brags about everything, even fake shit that he never did, he brags about. So why wouldn't he brag about something that he actually was able to accomplish? He would. And so he doesn't, because he didn't. So in case you didn't know, if you're watching this show, you already know that he's completely full of shit. All right, my man. Let's look at some tweets of the week. So this was this week, by the way. The president has access to your phone now. He can send presidential alerts directly to every cell phone in America. So this is from Trish Resists. Did everyone get their presidential alert? It looks suspiciously like Cyrillic, but he has nothing to do with
Did you
Russia.
guys? Did you guys get this one?
Thank you, Stormy. I appreciate your.
And that one too.
Yeah.
And my favorite one, I went to this actually. It was pretty good.
Was this? This is at PJ's house. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Oh, is that how you spell that?
It was PJ and Donkey Dong Doug. I remember. I put it in my calendar actually, from 1982.
My calendar.
We went there for skis. All right.
Devil's Triangle. It's a drinking game.
Yeah, Devil's Triangle. It's a drinking game.
You put 3 cups in a triangle. That's how it's played.
That's fucking awesome.
We got this one too.
Oh yeah, man. So I had the. So Senator John Cornyn sent out a glass of champagne picture. Not quite hashtags beers for Brett, but hashtag bubbly for Brett instead. This is a U.S. senator. And so the Just Dweck wrote, you're the good guys when you're having a take that rape victims party. And then I wrote, even the assholes are big in Texas. Hashtag Texas classy. I mean, really, they're out fucking partying that they got a Supreme Court justice. I mean, look, man, that's no big victory. You owned all 3 branches of government. There should have never been a question about your Supreme Court nominee getting on the court. Yet here we are. Here we are, FBI investigation.
There's undeniable fallout from this situation.
Yeah, man. I mean, especially when dummies like this don't quite get it.
Yeah.
When you got that guy on there squeaking past all his lies, the 90-something% of his documents that you never got released for anybody to look at, even though, hey, fuckers, this is a public servant going for a public job. We're paying his salary. We pay his salary now as a D.C. Court of Appeals judge. Why on earth will we not be able to see documents of things that he did on our behalf working for a president of the United States that we elected? Why should we not see an FBI investigation? Oh, FBI guys? Yeah, they work for us too. Why should we not be able to see an FBI investigation? Especially if it showed nothing that prevented him from getting on the Supreme Court, then why can't I see it?
Yeah.
If there's nothing in there, why can't I see that? The problem here is not that the Republicans won and got a Supreme Court justice. The problem is that if this was a 4-year appointment, okay, who gives a fuck? 4 years, like Trump. He's got a term limit. Worst case scenario, 6 years from now, he'll be done because that's the way it works. But this guy is for life, and he's not elected. He's appointed. So there's a different level of scrutiny that he should go through. As a politician running for office, I've gone through it. I had to disclose my finances, things that I invested in, my tax returns. I had to show everything that I am, even just to run. And I didn't even win. And then once you win, when you're in your seat, you have to every year file financial disclosures to make sure that you're not getting money from the people that you're voting on laws that affect their business. That's the idea of being transparent. So we have a president who doesn't do that for the first time in history, or modern history at least, who doesn't let us know what his financial investments are in. And now we have that guy appointing somebody to the Supreme Court for a lifetime appointment without anybody knowing anything about him except the calendar from 1982 where he went to PJ's house for brewskis. That's what we know about this fucking asshole. How do I know that? Because a senator from fucking Texas just tweeted out, beers for Brett. Because we all know I like beer. I drink beer. I still like beer. Sometimes I drank too many beers. That's what we know about our Supreme Court justice. Even though he's there for life. It's crazy. End of him.
You know,
right, rant over.
Before I started recovering, I used to use the excuse of sometimes I drink too much vodka. Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes.
It doesn't really hold up, man.
All the time.
Yeah, those days are gone now. When I was young enough I'm old enough to remember that cops used to pull people over and then tell them to walk home.
Or dump out their beer.
Right.
Hell, where I grew up,
Not anymore.
Cops would see you drinking, like years ago. Cops would see you drinking a beer, they wouldn't even pull you over.
My dad used to have it in between his legs. He used to have it in his lap. So when he got pulled over, the beer was in his lap.
Car. He doesn't give a fuck.
Oh, my dad used to have a beer in one hand, a cigarette in the other, and arms on the steering wheel trying to light a cigarette, with the beer in the other hand.
I actually thought I didn't really even know that you couldn't drink in your car or have a can, or your passenger couldn't have an open can for like a long time because of how common it was with my father.
Yeah, man. So those don't play anymore.
Yeah.
So thank you at the Dweck. What else we got?
I have no friends.
Real pharmacist. This was great. At first I thought, someone photoshopped this. Turns out completely real. Donald Trump walking on to Air Force One with toilet paper stuck to the bottom of his shoe. I mean, you have no friends. You know that nobody really gives a shit about you. You know that everybody there thinks you're a fucking asshole because there's nothing but people with eyes on you the entire time you're moving around because you're the president of the United States. They all saw that toilet paper. Not a one of them made a move to say, Mr. President, you've got toilet paper on your shoe. I mean, he'd point out a sniper on a rooftop a mile away.
Right?
But a piece of toilet paper on the shoe of the president, I don't think they missed that. They're the Secret Service. So they let him climb up onto Air Force One. And Trump later said, I believe the quote was, that the toilet paper wasn't stuck on him, it was stuck with him. They were just having fun. That's a reference to him getting laughed at the UN. They said they weren't laughing at him, they were laughing with him. They were laughing at you, Mr. President.
What kind of fucking White House are we running in this country where we don't have bidets in the White House?
I don't know. I'll be surprised if there's not actually gold-plated toilet bowls in the fucking White House now, because, classy.
Yeah. Bidets that, like, spit out, I don't know, some kind of
Perrier.
Monster
It's
energy
Perrier
drink or
water.
something.
Monster
Right.
energy drink.
Yeah. I understand the couches in the Oval Office now are animal print. All right, what else we got? Because classy. Oh, yeah. So this is at mfox207. So I told the cops, don't be so nice. Bang their heads when you arrest suspects. Ha, ha, ha. And then the dawning of realization. And then the helmets come out. That's fucking awesome. Worst family ever. I mean, really. Maybe the Manson family, but these guys, I don't think the Manson family caused that much destruction. What else we got?
Ooh.
Look at this. Where in the world is Melania San Diego?
I couldn't tell what this was a picture of. I'm like, wait.
At Griff PR,
What am I
that is
looking at?
that is the shit of the week, man. Look at that. Look at that. Ha ha. You're so funny, Dr. Jones. She's doing a fucking Raiders of the Lost Ark. Somebody said, I think somebody else said she did. She got one of the Nazi outfits from Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? Wasn't that one of the Nazi guys dressed like that?
That's exactly what they dressed
I mean,
like.
totally, dude. Somebody is really, really, really into cosplay. So you know what? This is when you just say to yourself, you know what? Just go away. Why are
What
you
is
even
she
a thing?
covering in front of the pyramids? What's going on there?
She's away from having to have that mushroom penis near
There's
her.
no fucking new news in that area, let me tell you. It's been a while since there's been any fucking development next to the guy with the lion body.
Well, there hasn't been a development there since the president got on the phone with the president of Egypt and asked him if he knew the song "Walk Like an Egyptian" and if he liked it. True story.
Yeah,
The one I saw was-
it is a true story.
That she stole Michael Jackson's wardrobe.
Nice. Yeah, that's Smooth Criminal. Dun, dun,
Yep.
dun, 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 dun. All right, what else we got? So at Loud Thorpe, why does CNN say that the economy is going in the right direction? And read that. We need to stop measuring the economy by how well rich people are doing. And that's the truth of it, man. And that's, like I said, all those empires we looked at, it was always the people at the top that were always doing well, and it was always the people at the bottom that were fucking lazy. Making the people at the top rich, but somehow never enough. Never enough. And that's where we're still at today. Unfortunately, you got all those uneducated people that believe that rich people are looking out for them. So, oh my God, from at Martha Gill, it's a fucking pith helmet. She is literally wearing a pith helmet and riding crops. Look at the boots she's got on.
Yeah.
All she needs is the little horsetail whip in her hand to swat the flies away and, to keep her horse moving forward when she gets back on her mount. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? Seriously. This is, First Lady Barbie.
First Lady Barbie.
I shouldn't be kink shaming, but that's probably later in the bedroom with the whip and all that.
Yeah. For like a real, man, not her husband. I don't even want to even fucking picture that for a minute. Ugh.
Brett Kavanaugh?
I think they copulated once, and that's how they got their child. I would hate to have to think that she had to fuck him more than once for the couple $1 million in her prenup.
Yeah,
That's
right.
pretty lucky because it's uncommon for wealthy people to be able to have kids.
Well, when he's
usually have to-
70 and she's he was in his 60s and she was like 30, 32.
It was
or
all
something.
her. It was
Yeah,
mostly
man.
her.
Yeah. So no big thing there. Although being a model for all those years with all the the meth, the coke, and everything else, who knows if you could still have a kid? But shocking, they did, and I'm sure he's perfectly okay. Sure, those genes are working out fine. So here's our new 3 branches of government: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. This is where we're at, folks. Take a good look. That is the face of your United States of America government. United States of America. That's it. That's what Flyover America has made the people in charge. Those are the faces of the people in charge.
Lindsey
Those are the guys.
Graham almost looks like the Predator.
Yeah, it does.
All he has to do is go invisible, so I could just see just a little bit of the outline of him. It'd be perfect.
Where's Arnold when you need him? Yeah,
Right. Well, Arnold is out there fucking railing against Trump and this bullshit every day, and that guy's a fucking Republican whose dad was a Nazi. You know what I mean? And even he gets it. I mean, he came from fucking Austria, came from an iron fucking curtain country. And he gets it. But whatever. That's our tweets of the week. Thank you, all you resistors out there that keep me sane by putting funny shit on the internet, because if it's not for that and, looking at kitten videos and those kinds of stupid things, what else would I do with life except come here on Sunday and rant for an hour. That is all for my ranting hour and the middle politics and profanity this week. Thank you all for joining us on behalf of everybody here at Howard Broadcasting. For Ryan, for Justin, and myself, we will see you next week. Bye.
I know to you straight around a suicide.